No one could have imagined that 8 years of marriage and 8 years of dedicated career hard work for Leah would be ruthlessly schemed and completely drained by the husband she had loved and trusted for years, in collusion with another woman. She had devoted her heart and soul to her family and career, shouldered every hardship behind the scenes, and built her husband up into a glamorous, successful boss with her silent perseverance and dedication. Yet all she got in return was a premeditated, earth-shattering conspiracy. Her husband had cheated on his subordinate, secretly transferred all marital assets, and colluded with the company boss to strip her of her position. Step by step, he laid traps, determined to leave her penniless and force her out of their marriage with nothing. Her peaceful, stable life was nothing but an illusion. A deadly scheme designed to destroy everything she had was fully set in motion, and Leah, kept completely in the dark, knew absolutely nothing about it. At 7 o'clock in the morning, daylight flooded the house. The room was so quiet that only the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint rustle of wind outside the windows could be heard. Leah woke up right on time, no laziness, no hesitation, falling straight into the daily routine she had followed for years. She tidied up the entire house, carefully reviewed monthly bills for family medical insurance, property taxes, and daily expenses, confirmed all reservations for her children's after-school care were in place, and prepared a breakfast for two. She managed every trivial matter of the household with impeccable thoroughness. After 8 years of marriage, she had long outgrown the passion and melodrama of youth, channeling all her tenderness and energy into silent support and unwavering dedication. She and her husband Eli had co-founded a small brand design studio. In the early days of the business, armed with professional design qualifications, she had been the core creative force of the team. But after marriage, to support Eli's public career and help him shine in the spotlight, she voluntarily stepped back from all public exposure and took on the most tedious behind-the-scenes work: client retention, project coordination, account reconciliation, process implementation, and team scheduling. Eli excelled at social engagement, business negotiation, and public relations. Free from all trivial daily and operational burdens, he steadily built an image of an elegant, professional, rising elite entirely on the solid foundation Leah had built for him. Everyone praised Eli for his outstanding competence and sharp vision, yet no one knew that behind all his glamour stood Leah's 8 years of silent dedication and selfless support. After breakfast, Leah changed into her well-tailored gray business suit, grabbed her minimalist leatherwork bag, and drove to the studio. On this day, the company held its annual all-hands meeting, the most important formal gathering of the year, determining strategic adjustments, personnel appointments, and annual development plans. All employees attended in formal attire without exception. The studio featured a minimalist American luxury style with floor-to-ceiling glass windows that flooded the entire conference room with crisp autumn sunlight, creating a solemn and orderly atmosphere. Employees sat upright with laptops open and phones flipped face down, waiting quietly for CEO Ron's annual review and strategic announcement. Seated in the middle section of the conference table with a calm demeanor, Leah flipped through her annual work records, assuming like everyone else that this would be a routine team iteration meeting. She never once suspected that this seemingly ordinary all-hands meeting was a meticulously arranged public humiliation tailor-made for her. Ron Cody, 45 years old, the company's investor and chief administrative officer, was a pure businessman who valued nothing but profit and possessed no warmth or sentimentality. He began with a routine review of annual performance data and elaborated on the industry's trend toward youthfulness, lightweight operations, and trendy innovation, claiming that the studio must abandon outdated traditional models, recruit fresh talent, and complete brand upgrading. The entire staff listened silently, detecting no abnormalities. Leah even agreed with the strategic plan, acknowledging team iteration as an inevitable industry trend and preparing herself to cooperate with upcoming adjustments. But Ron's tone shifted abruptly, cold and decisive, with no warning or buffer whatsoever. To optimize corporate strategy and team vitality, per management resolution, Leah Marshall's full-time position and core work authority are terminated with immediate effect. Meanwhile, Mila Hayes is appointed Senior Marketing Supervisor, taking full charge of client liaison, project coordination, team management, and all other core operational duties. With just one sentence, the air in the conference room turned icy and stagnant. Faint whispers broke out instantly, interwoven with the soft scrape of moving chairs and the sudden hush of paused pens. Countless stunned glances locked firmly on Leah, forming an inescapable net of attention. Everyone was shocked. Everyone was watching, waiting to see how this 8-year veteran who had built half the studio from the ground up would respond to her sudden dismissal. Leah's heart sank sharply, a cold, dull ache spreading through her chest, yet her expression remained steady. No loss of composure, no angry questioning. She simply lifted her gaze toward the newly appointed supervisor walking slowly onto the stage. 27-year-old Mila stood poised and slender with immaculate makeup, dressed in a crisp, white custom suit that exuded flamboyant competence. A flawless professional smile lingered on her face. Leah recognized her at once. This woman was no stranger. She was the ambiguous figure repeatedly appearing on Eli's private social media accounts, his exclusive work partner for countless business trips, team gatherings, and late-night overtime sessions, and the deliberately blurred companion hidden in his photo albums. Over the years, Leah had noticed countless clues, yet she had always trusted her marriage and cherished her peaceful life, choosing time and again to overlook every subtle red flag. Unfamiliar perfume scents, late-night work messages, vague travel excuses, and inconsistent consumption records. She had convinced herself she was oversensitive, that these were nothing but normal workplace, social interactions for adults. Only in this moment did she wake up completely. Every coincidence was deliberate concealment. Every ambiguous interaction was premeditated replacement. Leah's eyes darted instantly to her husband Eli sitting below the stage. 40-year-old Eli sat straight in his seat, his head hung low, his fingers unconsciously rubbing the edge of his notebook, deliberately avoiding every one of her glances. He showed no surprise, offered no defense, spoke no excuse. In total silence, he acquiesced to and accepted this personnel resolution that drove his own wife out of the company. In that instant, Leah saw the whole truth clearly. This was no temporary corporate adjustment, no normal workplace elimination mechanism. It was a months-long calculated purge orchestrated secretly by Eli in collusion with Ron. As a profit-driven businessman, Ron had long seen through Eli's selfish motives. He knew Mila was young, ambitious, and highly dependent, far easier to control and more profitable than the steady, conservative, and foundational Leah. To secure Eli's core technology and industry resources, Ron had complied without hesitation, using this public workplace humiliation to completely uproot Leah's career foundation. Standing on the stage, Mila delivered her work report with poise and professionalism, yet her eyes glinted with hidden provocation and triumph. She effortlessly took over the client resources, team system, and project processes that Leah had cultivated and refined painstakingly for 8 years, reaping all the fruits of Leah's years of hard work without paying any price. Ron remained cold and detached throughout, repeatedly emphasizing that the team needs youthful vitality and outdated models must be eliminated. With cold business rhetoric, he completely negated 8 years of Leah's persistent dedication and hard work. Hundreds of eyes fixed rigidly on Leah, everyone waiting for her to break down, cry out, or confront them, eager to witness a messy public showdown between a wife and a mistress. But Leah refused to give them the satisfaction. Overwhelming grievance, shock, and betrayal churned violently in her chest, threatening to overwhelm her rationality, yet she restrained every emotion firmly. No watery eyes, no trembling body, no arguments, no public breakdown. Years of patience and insight had taught her clearly that losing control in public would only put her at a complete disadvantage, turn her into a laughingstock, and validate their false label of her being emotional, unprofessional, and outdated. She stood slowly, her movements steady and calm. She smoothed the creases of her suit jacket and walked firmly toward the stage. Amid everyone's stunned stares, she took the initiative to extend her hand and shake Mila's. The moment their fingertips touched, she felt Mila's relaxed, confident grip, the unmasked superiority of a victor. Leah spoke in a steady, unwavering tone, delivering her words with impeccable professional etiquette. "Congratulations on your new role. I wish you every success with the team." No bitterness, no sarcasm, nothing but utmost, dignified restraint. After the handshake, she turned back to her workstation and quietly packed her personal belongings: a custom pen she had used for 8 years, several notebooks filled with work records, a faded employee badge, and an old photo of her and Eli from the studio's early days. These few simple items, placed in a plain paper bag, summed up her entire 8-year career. She never glanced at Eli again, paid no attention to the whispering colleagues around her, and felt no nostalgia for the office she had founded and polished with her own hands. Beneath the silent stares of the entire staff, she walked slowly out of the glass doors with her bag in hand. The autumn sunlight outside was piercingly bright, and the cool wind ruffled her hair. She did not stop to cry or release her emotions. She simply got into her car, started the engine, and drove away steadily. The scenery along the familiar suburban road remained unchanged, yet her world had been utterly overturned. After a brief moment of daze, all her weakness faded away, leaving only absolute clarity and icy calm in her heart. She knew well that this dignified exit was not surrender, it was preparation. Today, everyone had forced her out in disgrace. One day, she would settle every betrayal and every scheme thoroughly, relying on her strength and the rules. On the drive back to her single-family villa, Leah's mind raced relentlessly. She did not drown in heartbreak like a jilted lover, nor did she simmer in rage over the public humiliation she had endured. Years of overseeing business operations and handling crises had trained her to rise above emotion instinctively and calmly review every suspicious detail. The swift, clean, and utterly unforeseen professional takedown that had unfolded that morning was far too perfect, too polished to be an impulsive decision or routine corporate restructuring. From start to finish, it was a terrifyingly precise, man-made scheme. A casual marital flirtation or fleeting extramarital thrill would never have driven Eli to gamble away 8 years of hard-won business foundations, years of marital affection, and his entire professional reputation by colluding with outsiders to completely dismantle her power. There was only one logical explanation. Every move had been planned long in advance. Mila's promotion, Leah's dismissal, and the team's reshuffling were all deliberate pieces of Eli's long-term plot. The public power seizure at work was merely a superficial blade. The truly fatal final blow was lurking in the shadows she had never noticed. The car glided slowly into her familiar neighborhood. The smooth, spotless streets, neatly trimmed greenery, and the tidy, exquisite courtyards of every household maintained the serene, idyllic facade of an upper-middle-class community. This single-family villa, which she had renovated, arranged, and maintained with her own hands for 8 years, had once been her greatest pride. Every detail, from the soft furnishing layouts and courtyard landscapes to home appliance selections and storage designs, had cost her countless hours and immense effort. She had always believed this place was her safe harbor, her fallback, and the solid foundation of her stability. Yet gazing through the car window now, the house felt eerily quiet, coldly unfamiliar. It was no longer a warm home. It was a carefully laid trap, waiting to snap shut on her. She parked the car and pushed open the front door, only to be greeted by an empty, unsettling silence. Eli had not come home. Not a single message of consolation, not one explanation, not a word of comfort. From the morning meeting until now, he had vanished completely, utterly unreachable, as if the public ordeal that had driven his wife to the brink of ruin had nothing to do with him at all. Changing into loose, comfortable loungewear, Leah shed the tension of her business attire but did not let down her guard for a single second. Seated beneath the soft glow of the living room floor lamp, her expression calm and her gaze sharp, she cast aside all emotional exhaustion. She told herself that tears, breakdowns, and dwelling on love and wrongs were utterly futile. Her enemies pressed forward relentlessly, striking fatal blows with every move and leaving no room for weakness. If she collapsed, panicked, or lost control, she would fall straight into their trap, completely at their mercy, waiting to be thoroughly disposed of. Taking a deep breath, she turned on her computer, plugged in her external hard drive, and began a comprehensive review and evidence collection process. Over their 8 years of marriage, Leah had single-handedly managed every household account, income and expenditure, financial investment, and asset allocation. Eli had always stayed completely detached from family affairs, daily expenses, and financial matters. He constantly presented himself as generous and trusting to outsiders, claiming he fully entrusted all household management to his wife, crafting a perfect public image of a devoted, easygoing husband. Once, Leah had taken this for genuine trust and reliance, grateful for his understanding and shouldering every trivial burden in silence. But in hindsight, it had never been trust at all. It was deliberate avoidance, intentional invisibility, and a calculated ploy to leave himself ample room for scheming. By refusing to touch family finances, check asset flows, or participate in financial planning, he had paved the way for covert operations, hidden fund transfers, and the gradual depletion of their marital assets right under her nose. Leah's fingers flew across the keyboard as she logged into their joint bank accounts, family savings accounts, shared investment portfolios, and the studio's corporate linked accounts one by one, pulling up every transaction record from the past year. Dense rows of data flooded the screen, once familiar numbers now glaring and menacing. At first, she clung to a sliver of hope, convincing herself she was overreacting, that the transactions were merely routine business turnover and regular operational expenses. But as she scrolled through more records and examined every detail closely, her last shred of optimism crumbled completely. The cold, brutal truth laid bare before her, suffocating in its cruelty. Over the past 12 months, Eli had continuously transferred massive sums of money through countless covert methods, anonymous transactions, third-party intermediaries, and falsified business expenditure cash-outs. Each amount was carefully split into smaller installments to evade large-sum regulatory scrutiny, funneled through multiple channels in total secrecy. His techniques were polished, his methods concealed, his layout meticulous, clearly the result of long-term research, deliberate practice, and professionally designed asset diversion tactics. Countless transfers of tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of US dollars had flowed silently into unknown private accounts, with no corresponding contracts, project records, invoices, household expenditure logs, or legitimate business purposes. Every outflow was untraceable and unaccounted for, completely inconsistent with both the studio's normal operational patterns and ordinary household spending habits. Worse still were the shocking records of frequent luxury expenditures, high-end designer boutiques, top-tier medical aesthetic clinics, 5-star Michelin restaurants, upscale suburban resort hotels, and luxury car maintenance centers. Every expensive charge was dated on holidays, weekends, and late nights, precisely during the times Eli had claimed to be working overtime on business trips, attending team gatherings, or handling corporate negotiations. Leah's heart sank to the bottom. Her body turned cold, her fingers stiff and numb. She had always lived frugally, budgeting meticulously for every household expense, sacrificing her own desires and consumer needs for the stability of the studio and the peace of their family. She had put their home and career above everything else. Yet all that she had fought so hard to protect had been recklessly squandered and ruthlessly emptied by Eli, all to wine and dine another woman, to support his mistress. To further solidify her evidence and uncover the full truth, Leah immediately accessed the cloud-backed dashcam footage from her vehicle. California's automotive cloud system stored ultra-long-duration recordings, capturing unobstructed in-car visuals, audio conversations, and travel trajectories that could not be manually deleted or tampered with, hard, irrefutable proof. Sorting the files by timeline, she opened the recordings from Eli's solo outings, late-night returns, and out-of-town business trips. The next second, Mila's bright, arrogant, triumphant voice cut clearly through the speakers, completely unmasked and brazenly revealing every malicious thought. Once we kick her out for good, the studio is ours, all the assets are ours. We won't have to sneak around anymore. I used all the money you transferred me for the apartment down payment. You covered your tracks so well, she never suspected a thing. I've already coordinated with Ron. After today's meeting, she has no footing left in the company. No job, no income. She stands zero chance against us. Once the divorce papers are signed, she leaves with nothing. 8 years of her life wasted. She gets absolutely nothing. Then came Eli's cold, emotionless, calculating voice, every syllable devoid of guilt, every sentence brutally ruthless, don't worry. She's soft-hearted, sentimental, knows nothing about the law, and never puts up a fight. She's endured everything silently for 8 years, and she'll do the same now. Once she's completely sidelined, stripped of all support and confidence, she'll surrender and leave obediently. In the end, everything will be ours. Clip after clip of audio, frame after frame of footage, sentence after sentence of blatant scheming completely shattered Eli's 8-year facade of being a gentle, devoted, reliable husband. Leah finally understood completely. This betrayal was not a momentary mistake, a fleeting affair, or a passing greed. It was a sophisticated, multi-stage crime years in the making. First, he maintained a long-term fake persona as a family man to lower her guard and let her continue shouldering all burdens for him. Second, he carried out a secret affair and spoiled his mistress with their marital assets. Third, he covertly diverted and depleted their shared wealth to cut off her financial foundation. Fourth, he colluded with his boss and his mistress to seize power publicly at work and destroy her career. Fifth, he forced her into unemployment and helplessness, finalizing the trap with a divorce lawsuit designed to drive her out with 0 assets. 5 fatal steps, interlocking flawlessly, preying on human weaknesses and exploiting her kindness and trust at every turn, all engineered to crush her completely. Night fell fully over the villa. The outside world was pitch black, while the brightly lit house lay deathly silent, trapping Leah alone in the vast, empty space. The home that had once been warm and comforting now felt like a gorgeous, suffocating prison. 8 years of devotion, companionship, perseverance, and trust had amounted to nothing but an elaborate scam tailor-made to exploit her. As she marked every fund transfer, archived every audio recording, and sorted through every piece of evidence of their conspiracy, an abrupt, icy ringtone sliced through the silence, the final straw that shattered every last illusion. The caller was a professional attorney from a local California family law firm. Her tone was rigid, cold, and entirely unemotional, skipping all pleasantries to deliver an official legal notice without the slightest mercy. The lawyer informed her clearly Eli had formally filed a unilateral divorce petition with the court an entire week prior. He had refused all private communication, face-to-face negotiation, and reconciliation attempts. From this point forward, all discussions, negotiations, and disputes would be conducted solely through legal counsel on both sides. The attorney then recited, word for word, the long-prepared, carefully polished divorce asset division clauses drafted by Eli, each one greedy, ruthless, and devastatingly cruel. First, he completely denied Leah's status as a co-founder and partner of a studio, erasing all her entrepreneurial contributions over 8 years. He claimed the studio was his sole independent investment and personal business, framing Leah as nothing more than a regular salaried employee with no equity, no dividend rights, and no eligibility for career compensation. Second, he deliberately concealed, transferred, and split up millions of dollars in marital joint assets, falsifying business losses and empty accounts to fabricate the illusion of 0 household savings and 0 shared property, attempting to leave Leah with nothing at all. Third, he offered only a humiliatingly nominal compensation sum, utterly disregarding 8 years of her unpaid household labor, entrepreneurial dedication, and selfless family support. Fourth, he distorted the truth and fabricated false accusations, claiming Leah was taciturn, neglectful of family duties, rigid, and a hindrance to his career development. He shifted full responsibility for the failed marriage onto her entirely, painting himself as an innocent victim forced into divorce. The moment she heard every clause, the last trace of lingering affection, reluctance, and false hope in Leah's heart vanished into thin air. She finally saw the full truth clearly. The public dismissal in the morning was merely a prelude. The midnight divorce lawsuit was the real fatal strike. Eli had given her no room to breathe, no chance for reconciliation, no shred of dignified escape. He had waited and planned and endured for years to reach this moment. He had enjoyed 8 years of her selfless dedication and sacrifices, climbed to the peak of his career standing on her hard work, then colluded with others to strip her of everything, destroy her career, ruin her marriage, and drain all her value. Worst of all, he intended to slander and defame her, branding her the failure of their marriage while leaving her with absolutely nothing. selfish, greedy, ruthless, cruel beyond measure. As the lawyer on the other end of the phone continued mechanically reciting legal terms, explaining the statute of limitations for litigation, evidence submission deadlines, and subsequent court procedures, Leah remained eerily calm. No trembling, no choking, no angry questioning. In a steady, controlled tone, she replied clearly and firmly, "I will have my attorney contact yours." With that single sentence, she broke free from all passive disadvantage. After hanging up, silence flooded the house once more. The night wind howled outside, rustling the courtyard leaves in a sound that mocked the absurdity of her marriage. Leah sat quietly in the living room for a long time, tearless and emotionless, left only with icy desolation and absolute clarity. Since Eli had abandoned all affection, cut off every escape route, schemed relentlessly, and pushed her to the brink of destruction, she would no longer show mercy. She would lay aside her gentleness, sever all lingering sentiment, and fight back with everything she had, delivering a thorough, dignified reckoning. From this night on, she was no longer the tolerant, self-sacrificing wife, no longer the yielding, supportive co-founder. She was a fighter, armed with irrefutable evidence, calm and rational, determined to defend her rights by any means necessary. He wanted her driven out penniless, ruined, and disgraced. Then she would tear down every facade, expose every conspiracy, and shatter every lie. She would lay bare all his greed, marital misconduct, and malicious scheming for the world to see, making him and his accomplices pay the most painful, thorough, and irreversible price. The next morning, dawn broke faintly over the horizon. Leah woke up right on schedule, no sleepless despair, no emotional burnout. After a night of sober reflection, she had stripped away all her weakness and false hope, fully stepping into a state of efficient rights defense. She knew clearly that Eli's reckless cruelty stemmed from far more than simple selfishness and ruthlessness. He had long consulted professional lawyers and completed a full set of legal disguises and asset layouts. He had firmly believed that she knew nothing about family law, had no access to evidence collection channels, and was too reserved and weak to fight back, leaving her no choice but to accept his harsh terms and walk away with nothing. Letting go of all past affection, Leah no longer dwelled on the right and wrong of their broken marriage. She focused solely on facts, evidence, legal provisions, and her legitimate rights and interests. Recommended by a senior local legal practitioner in California, she screened repeatedly and officially signed with Kate Brewer, a veteran family law attorney with 20 years of litigation experience. 52-year-old Kate was calm, rigorous, and obsessively detail-oriented. She specialized in cases of malicious marital asset transfer, marital fault determination, and high-net-worth marital property division. She was thoroughly familiar with every legal provision, loophole, and winning key of California's community property system. Never one for empty emotional comfort or superficial consolation for clients, she focused exclusively on evidence sorting, legal application, and logical closure, earning her a reputation as a precision-crushing family law attorney in the industry. Their first meeting at the law firm embodied a purely American professional scene. The office featured a minimalist gray and white design with dual filing systems of electronic archives and paper ledgers. Meticulous and composed throughout the consultation, Kate systematically broke down the core rules of California family law, the burden of proof, litigation procedures, and critical winning strategies for Leah. After listening to Leah's full account and initial case clues, Kate pinpointed the core crisis in one sentence. This is not a spontaneous affair or impulsive asset transfer. It is a systematic legal siege planned for more than half a year. Eli has packaged all maliciously diverted marital assets as legitimate studio operating expenses, covering up his misconduct under the guise of commercial activity. Ordinary bank flow evidence is completely insufficient to break through his disguise. This was the core reversal of the case. Leah had once assumed Eli's actions were scattered asset embezzlement and impulsive power seizure. In truth, he had completed a comprehensive legal layout long in advance. Every single operation had avoided basic legal risks and created a false impression of legality. He had even retained records of trivial household expenditures to fabricate a persona of a responsible husband with no marital faults, deliberately blocking all conventional rights defense paths. To turn the tables, she had to abandon fragmented evidence confrontation and build a brand new, complete, airtight evidence system with full logical closure. Under Kate's professional guidance, Leah began systematically sorting out all evidence of her dedication over 8 years of marriage and entrepreneurship, tailoring every document to litigation requirements and solidifying her legitimate legal rights layer by layer. First, evidence of professional partnership. She organized the studio's founding partnership agreement, initial capital investment records, 8 years of project overall ledgers, signed client docking documents, team attendance and management records, and account reconciliation vouchers. These materials fully prove that she was not a dependent housewife, but a legal core co-founder with undisputed equity and career rights in the studio, completely overturning Eli's false claim of sole proprietorship and independent operation. Second, evidence of marital dedication. She compiled 8 years of property maintenance receipts, annual tax returns, family medical insurance payment records, childcare vouchers, social arrangement ledgers, and daily expenditure flows. The full documentation testified that she had shouldered all household responsibilities single-handedly for years, providing indispensable stable support for Eli's worry-free entrepreneurship, social expansion, and career development, granting her legitimate rights to marital property division and compensatory compensation. Third, preliminary evidence of marital fault. She sorted out abnormal fund flows, dashcam audio recordings, ambiguous chat screenshots, and out-of-town consumption records she had collected, establishing initial proof of Eli's adultery and illegal asset movement, laying a solid foundation for in-depth evidence collection. While sorting through old archives, she came across a group photo from the studio's early founding days. The younger versions of herself and Eli stood side by side in their tiny original office, eyes full of sincerity, passion, and firm anticipation for a future of shared growth and lasting stability. The stark contrast between the warm hopes of the past and the cold calculation of the present stirred a faint, sour melancholy in her heart. Yet she refused to sink into sentimentality. She gently stroked the edge of the photo, then put it away calmly in the next moment. She allowed herself to miss the old days, but would never permit herself to relapse into weakness. Targeting Eli's tightly woven legal disguise, Kate formulated an accurate breakthrough strategy, abandoning fragmented clue-based confrontation and adopting a full-chain, closed-loop evidence collection approach. She formally entrusted a licensed local California private detective agency to conduct legal in-depth investigations. Meanwhile, she pre-applied to the court for a subpoena, preparing to trace all original corporate account flows, tax records, and project ledgers of the studio. The goal was to completely pierce Eli's commercial disguise and accurately distinguish legitimate business expenditures from malicious marital asset transfers and third-party gifts. Cooperating fully and calmly, Leah submitted all family account information, original studio archives, travel trajectories, and social records, precisely narrowing the evidence scope to provide comprehensive support for in-depth investigation. The full 2-week closed-door, in-depth forensic investigation drew to a successful close under stringent judicial compliance protocols. To guarantee every piece of evidence held absolute admissibility in court, Leah and her attorney Kate strictly abided by California's private investigator licensing standards, legal boundaries for private evidence collection, and rigorous corporate financial forensic tracing guidelines throughout the process. There were 0 procedural violations, 0 defects, and 0 loopholes. All captured high-definition footage, original audio recordings, cloud archives, financial forensic drafts, and corporate account ledgers were fully traceable, verifiable, and eligible for in-court cross-examination, irrefutable hard evidence that opposing counsel could never discredit before California's family court. Over those 14 days, undercurrents of chaos swirled outside, yet Leah maintained an extremely low-key, unruffled daily routine, her composure flawless without a single crack. She deliberately suppressed the cold rage and hatred churning inside her, never reaching out to Eli, sending no accusatory messages, and making no unnecessary probes. Unlike ordinary wounded wives who dwelled on blame, wept over grievances, or crumbled emotionally, she buried all her sharp edges and stripped away every trace of ferocity, molding herself into a helpless, defenseless woman crushed by three simultaneous catastrophes: a workplace power grab, marital betrayal, and sudden divorce filing, left with no choice but to passively await fate's verdict. This extreme forbearance, docility, and silence struck straight at Eli and Mila's conceit and arrogance, gradually eroding the last vestiges of their wariness. In their minds, Leah was a naturally reserved woman ignorant of legal recourse and family law. The sudden dual blows had shattered her completely, robbing her of all strength and leverage to fight back. They were convinced she stood isolated and powerless and would ultimately cave in, accept their harsh settlement terms, and walk away penniless in disgrace. With their guard fully lowered, the pair grew bolder and unrestrained. They no longer took pains to hide their intimate private encounters, cautiously cover traces of asset transfers, or conceal anomalous travel routes and spending records. They cohabited openly, splurged recklessly, and freely mapped out their new life after seizing Leah's business and assets, fully convinced they held total control, their scheme airtight and victory assured. What they never realized was that every moment of carelessness, every indulgent escapade, every selfish calculation and arrogant display had been precisely documented and fully preserved around the clock by the investigative team, not a single detail omitted. All their dark self-interest, vile plotting, and illegal operations were laid bare under the lens of legal evidence collection, leaving them nowhere to hide and no grounds for denial. Upon the conclusion of a 2-week investigation cycle, the private detective team, alongside senior forensic auditors and financial tracing specialists, formally delivered an exhaustive, meticulously compiled, logically airtight complete evidence binder of staggering thickness. Hundreds of pages of investigative materials, thousands of valid records, fully traceable financial transaction logs, and coherent footage and audio recordings chipped away layer by layer at the commercial veneer, legal disguises, gentle husband persona, and innocent facade Eli had spent months painstakingly constructing. A fully integrated multidimensional evidence chain was forged, encompassing witness testimony, physical exhibits, documentary proof, and audio-visual recordings. The chapter's explosive core twist landed with full force. The fatal betrayal that had destroyed Leah's 8-year marriage, drained the fruits of her youth, and plundered her entrepreneurial achievements was never a fleeting marital indiscretion or impulsive emotional lapse. It constituted a premeditated, step-by-step scheme of extramarital cohabitation, long-term fraud, and meticulously orchestrated persecution spanning more than a year. Eli's wrongdoing extended far beyond simple emotional infidelity. Exploiting their joint venture, he maliciously siphoned core marital profits from the studio, squandered 8 years of accumulated community property on lavish, recurring purchases of real estate, luxury vehicles, and high-end designer goods for Mila. Every covert fund transfer and fabricated accounting entry stemmed from repeated, calculated dissipation of marital assets, qualifying as a severe statutory marital fault and malicious property infringement under state law. First, a irrefutable body of proof, confirming long-term extramarital cohabitation, shattering the flimsy excuse of workplace acquaintance and casual flirtation. Over 2 weeks, the investigative team organized, secured, and archived a complete chain of private movement records spanning nearly an entire year, with a timeline stretching from early last year up to the day of the workplace coup, unbroken, continuous, and gap-free. Evidence included high-resolution surveillance footage of frequent late-night cohabitation within the same city, fixed weekly records of private 2-person outings, full travel trajectories of joint cross-city trips for every holiday and weekend throughout the year, dual-name hotel check-in receipts from multiple 5-star luxury resorts, parking lot footage capturing the pair entering and exiting vehicles together, routine shared access logs from the residential complex gate system, and recordings of the two walking side-by-side in community public spaces. All materials bore official precise timestamps, geolocation coordinates, and investigative device identification numbers, forming an unshakable complete evidence chain with coherent timelines, clear scene details, and fully compliant collection procedures. The hard evidence unequivocally proved Eli and Mila's relationship was never the incidental workplace crossing or brief casual affair they claimed to outsiders, but a stable, normalized, highly private extramarital cohabitation lasting over 12 months. For an entire year, they hid their illicit romance behind the pretense of work, living together daily, traveling side by side, cohabitating in secret, and privately plotting future asset division and corporate takeover. They repeatedly deliberated on how to fully marginalize and oust Leah to seize all 8 years of entrepreneurial gains and marital community property. They brazenly encroached on Leah's marriage, drained 8 years of quiet sacrifice, and plundered the life and career she had built with her own hands. The facts of their marital fault were crystal clear and undeniable, leaving no room for excuse, whitewashing, or evasion, and completely dismantling all their hollow pretexts and fabricated personas. Second irrefutable body of proof, forensic tracing pierces commercial camouflage, pinpoints criminal malicious asset dissipation, the case's deadliest weapon. In the preceding months, Eli had devised an entire system of falsified accounting to facilitate the transfer of marital community property, evade legal accountability, and conceal his greedy self-interest. Leveraging his long-standing control over the studio's external operations, project coordination, and financial reporting, he disguised every large withdrawn sum of marital assets as legitimate business expenditures under the guise of project investments, equipment procurement, labor cooperation, creative outsourcing, marketing promotions, and other standard commercial categories to mask his ulterior motives. On publicly disclosed ledgers, all capital flows appeared neat, rational, and fully consistent with small business operational logic, seemingly compliant and unremarkable. He crafted a flawless illusion that all funds supported studio growth, with no personal misappropriation or improper marital spending. He hoped this impenetrable fake commercial shell would fool auditors, evade liability, and allow him to embezzle community assets unchecked. Yet the professional forensic audit team looked past superficial bookkeeping, penetrating all falsified expense reports to trace the studio's original corporate bank records, multi-year tax filing drafts, genuine project ledgers, archived original contracts, and payment receipt logs. The meticulously constructed commercial facade, maintained for months, shattered instantly, laying bare every dark, hidden, underhanded private transaction. Over the past year, numerous so-called project investment disbursements, totaling hundreds of thousands of US dollars apiece, with an aggregate value reaching millions, were verified via tracing to lack official project filing records, completed cooperative deliverables, partner coordination ledgers, project revenue returns, or any commercial output whatsoever. All funds bypassed the studio's formal financial workflows and compliance approvals, ultimately routed exclusively into Mila's personal bank accounts, investments in name only, serving solely as disguised transfers. Additionally, multiple high-value equipment procurement fees were riddled with inconsistencies and loopholes. No equipment warehousing logs, tax invoice deductions, corporate fixed asset registrations, or equipment usage ledgers existed, confirming zero genuine commercial purchases. Every cent funded Mila's private luxury brand shopping, custom designer apparel, premium cosmetic medical treatments, high-end skincare and body sculpting, and other purely personal expenses entirely unrelated to studio operations. Stripped of their veneer of legality, all ostensibly valid business expenditures amounted to premeditated, elaborately disguised, long-running malicious dissipation of marital community assets. The case's most explosive, ironclad conclusive evidence sealed the full scope and nature of the conspiracy. Deep forensic tracing confirmed that over the prior 12 months, Eli had privately diverted millions of dollars in joint studio operating profits. To evade asset audits, bypass community property oversight, and escape judicial screening, he employed opaque third-party nominee holding schemes to layer transfers, split transaction streams, and obscure fund origins. In complete secrecy, he purchased a high-end luxury furnished apartment in a prime suburban California commercial district and a brand-new, fully loaded luxury sedan for Mila. Every expense, the property down payment, fixed monthly mortgage installments, full vehicle purchase price, sales tax, annual insurance, and maintenance fees could be precisely traced back to marital joint business revenue and household shared income, each transaction fully documented and proven beyond dispute. This seemingly meticulous, undetectable private operation left a trail in every transaction, every ledger entry traceable end-to-end with no room for luck or loopholes. It irrefutably established Eli's extreme subjective malice. He was guilty of a statutory severe fault of long-term concealment of marital assets, large-scale transfer of community property, and gratuitous gifting of vast sums to a third party, with property infringement facts clear, culpability definite, and no grounds for rebuttal. Third irrefutable body of proof. Exposed pre-planning recordings and chat logs confirm premeditated collusion and calculated entrapment. Using legally sanctioned forensic data recovery tools, the investigative team fully restored the pair's deliberately deleted full cloud chat archives, year-round uninterrupted dashcam audio, back-end private call records, late-night private message threads, and travel location logs, reconstructing the entire layered, meticulous months-long conspiracy of malice between Eli and Mila. Their betrayal was never a spontaneous lapse. They had planned every move months in advance, refining each step of their malicious plot to seize power, embezzle assets, and frame Leah, how to gradually erode her founding partner equity through workplace authority, how to strip her of 8 years of career footing via personnel reshuffles and role replacement, how to split and covertly transfer marital assets to ensure she left the divorce with nothing, how to spread targeted defamation to paint Leah as rigid, incompetent, and a burden to the business, and how to collude with the company's owner to orchestrate her public workplace dismissal and permanently sever her career prospects and social reputation. Every chat transcript and audio recording was unflinchingly candid and unobscured, brimming with ravenous greed, icy cold-heartedness, and calculating malice. The evidence definitively proved their actions were not fleeting emotional missteps or impulsive transgressions, but deliberate, coordinated, precision-targeted infringement. The entire conspiracy of betrayal, corporate takeover, asset seizure, and marital dissolution was a pre-planned, phased, closed-loop campaign of persecution, their subjective malice fully confirmed with no possibility of mitigation or whitewashing. After receiving the full investigative materials, lead attorney Kate spent days systematically categorizing and filing all evidence, matching each item to relevant statutory provisions, and verifying its courtroom admissibility. She rigorously discarded fragmented, invalid, weak secondary evidence inadmissible at trial, repeatedly refining and optimizing the evidence framework to compile a final airtight, zero-defect, highly admissible conclusive evidence chain with no room for counterargument. The evidence framework covered 5 core dimensions in full: proof of long-term extramarital cohabitation, severe statutory marital fault, large-scale malicious dissipation of marital assets, premeditated workplace entrapment and persecution, and coordinated malicious infringement of partnership property. Each piece of evidence stood independently valid while mutually corroborating others in a logically closed loop, fully meeting California family court's highest standards of admissibility and permanently blocking all avenues for the opposing side to refute, reverse, or deny liability. Leah flipped page by page through the thick, detailed evidentiary binder, her fingers brushing dense transaction logs, stark intimate footage, and cold, calculating transcribed audio dialogue. She remained calm and steady throughout. No breakdowns, no outbursts of rage, no violent emotional displays. All the lingering doubts that had haunted her day and night, the grievances that stung her heart, the tiny moments that had driven her to self-doubt, were now laid bare in complete, unclouded clarity. She finally saw the truth with absolute clarity. Her 8 years of sincere devotion, quiet sacrifice, and gentle loyalty had not fallen victim to fading affection, but to a long premeditated, elaborately staged fraud. The last flicker of warmth, longing, and false hope tied to her past marriage vanished entirely, leaving only unshakable clarity, insight, and uncompromising resolve. Her long stretch of forbearance, reflection, quiet endurance, and strategic preparation reached its fruition at last. All the leverage forged in seclusion, calculated odds of victory, capital for overturning the outcome, and grounds for legal recourse were now firmly within her grasp. As the chapter drew to a close, Kate formally issued an official demand letter to opposing counsel's firm. The document was rigorously drafted with sharp, professional legal language, explicitly notifying the opposing party that comprehensive hard evidence of marital fault and malicious asset dissipation had been secured, and formally initiating divorce settlement negotiations in accordance with state law. The months-long passive deadlock was fully broken, and the balance of power reversed in an instant. Eli's legal team, once convinced of unassailable victory and certain they could force Leah out penniless, was trapped in an irreversible passive predicament, constrained at every turn with no path to recover their position. The formal negotiation session was held in the exclusive mediation conference room of a top-tier premium law firm in downtown California's Central Business District. The minimalist, solemn, airy, understated luxury space featured floor-to-ceiling glass windows blocking outside noise, illuminated by soft, cool indoor lighting. Free of the clamor of petty disputes and emotional outbursts, the atmosphere was restrained, distant, professional, and intensely high stakes. The entire negotiation adhered strictly to elite American family and commercial mediation standards. Advantage was never won through shouting, nor truth dictated by emotion. All confrontation rested on tangible evidence, precise statutory language, and sharp professional rhetoric, a quiet, layered, devastating battle of intellect and legal rules. All core parties were present for the direct confrontation. Leah and lead attorney Kate sat at their counsel table, upright, calm, and radiating unshakable poise. Composed and restrained, they carried the quiet gravitas forged through countless legal battles. Eli sat alongside his retained counsel Todd Geller, his posture arrogant, expression detached, his eyes still clouded by ingrained contempt and misplaced optimism. Though Mila, who had lurked in the background to reap ill-gotten gains through plundering another's life work, did not appear in person, her greedy desires, all improperly acquired assets, and the full dark conspiracy of collusion to seize power and embezzle funds stood as the central focal point of the negotiation, impossible to evade or disavow. Opposing counsel Todd had decades of experience litigating commercial civil disputes and high-net-worth divorce asset battles, with an aggressive, ruthless style specializing in high-pressure tactics, rhetorical manipulation, and psychological warfare. He mastered exploiting legal loopholes and rhetorical framing to maximize his client's gains while discrediting the opposing party. Opening the negotiation, he clung rigidly to the fabricated commercial facade and polished persona Eli had spent months crafting, adopting an arrogant, domineering tone as he restated his extremely self-serving, harsh asset division proposal. He pressed relentlessly, attempting to replicate his previous one-sided dominant stance and shatter Leah's psychological defenses entirely. Todd launched his rhetorical offensive first, every word self-serving and aggressive, twisting facts and distorting the truth to the fullest extent. He repeatedly glorified Eli's status as the core technical lead, infinitely magnifying his purported individual capabilities while deliberately dismissing and belittling every ounce of Leah's 8 years of labor and entrepreneurial achievements. He blatantly claimed all of Leah's studio work amounted to trivial auxiliary administrative and logistical coordination tasks, devoid of core technical value or foundational entrepreneurial contribution, entirely dependent on Eli for survival. Building on this false narrative, he categorically denied Leah's identity as a founding partner of a studio, arbitrarily reclassifying her as a mere salaried employee with no rights to equity division, asset compensation, or business profit sharing. He offered only a token, humiliating nominal payout of negligible value. Leveraging extreme high-pressure rhetoric, an aggressive negotiation posture, and warped logic, he sought to force Leah into immediate settlement and signature, compelling her to abandon the career she had built over 8 years and all legitimate marital property rights to satisfy Eli's selfish goal of monopolizing all assets and business while discarding his original spouse. Eli sat silent, observing the entire proceeding with a cold, haughty bearing, his eyes betraying undisguised contempt, unwavering certainty, and absolute confidence in his victory. He remained blindly convinced his months of fabricated accounting was flawless and impenetrable, that all asset transfers had been concealed within a closed, untraceable system. In his mind, Leah, alone and unschooled in law or evidence collection, lacked complete investigative capacity, professional legal representation, and bargaining leverage, making her incapable of challenging his long-laid intricate scheme. She would have no choice but to accept the grossly unequal harsh terms. To him, this negotiation remained a one-sided rout with a preordained outcome. In the first half of the mediation, Leah and Kate maintained extreme restraint, sitting quietly, listening attentively, and documenting every detail, refusing to interrupt the opposing counsel's arrogant rhetoric with premature rebuttals or counterattacks. They intentionally allowed the opposing side to escalate their greed, amplify unreasonable demands, and unleash wave after wave of oppressive bargaining language, letting Todd indulge in unrestrained arrogance, factual distortion, and malicious defamation. They meticulously recorded every false claim, every malicious characterization, every deliberate misrepresentation of reality, fully preserving full audio and written transcripts of the mediation to solidify documentary proof of the opposing party's subjective intent to unlawfully seize marital assets and deprive the spouse of legitimate career and property rights. They deliberately dulled their edge and adopted a posture of forbearance solely to force the opposing side to lay bare all their greed and malice, enabling a precise, comprehensive, irrefutable total takedown during their subsequent counterargument. Only after Todd had finished enumerating all unreasonable demands and concluded his aggressive pressure tactics, fully convinced he held the upper hand and guaranteed victory, did Kate launch her layered counterargument in a measured, organized, logically rigorous tone. Her speech was steady and unhurried, free of emotional outbursts yet razor-sharp and fatal with every sentence. Her pacing was composed, logic layered, and every strike targeted a critical vulnerability, each statement dismantling the opposing side's false narratives and arrogant confidence. Leah sat beside her, poised and dignified, her expression serene and unperturbed, quietly watching the greedy illusions, polished personas, and elaborate schemes the opposing side had relied upon crumble layer by layer and shatter completely before irrefutable evidence. First presentation of evidence, dismantling core false narrative, solidifying Leah's legitimate career rights. Kate sequentially submitted the original 8-year founding partnership agreement, studio initial capital contribution receipts, multi-year core project coordination ledgers, year-round signed client liaison documents, final account sign-off filings, project implementation coordination records, and a full portfolio of supporting evidence documenting years of full-time household sacrifice. The comprehensive evidence fully proved Leah was far more than a dependent housewife or worthless auxiliary staff, but the studio's bona fide core founding co-partner and co-creator. Her 8 years of entrepreneurial grit, end-to-end back-end coordination, key client relationship management, team operational oversight, and full household provision span the studio's entire journey from inception to steady profitability, indispensable, thoroughly documented, and irreplaceable. The complete dossier shattered the opposing side's fabricated claim that Leah contributed nothing, held no equity, lacked value, and was fully dependent, invalidating all rationality behind their unreasonable division proposal at its root and overturning their central argument entirely. Second presentation of evidence, piercing the innocent persona, proving severe marital fault. Kate systematically played surveillance footage of long-term extramarital cohabitation, records of private two-person travel trajectories, proof of joint holiday residence, and audio recordings of plots to cheat and scheme. Complete, authentic, intuitive footage laid bare every dark truth of Eli's year-long marital betrayal, two-faced deception, premeditated corporate takeover, and calculated asset embezzlement, fully shredding his public persona as a devoted, stable, innocent husband blameless for marital breakdown. Confronted with hard evidence, all the opposing sides' hollow excuses, deliberate evasions, and distorted claims collapsed entirely, the severe marital fault established as an unassailable fact beyond denial. Third presentation of evidence, decisive, devastating takedown, obliterating all asset camouflage. This was the mediation's ultimate trump card, the core ace shattering all of the opposing sides' confidence. Kate submitted a full forensic financial tracing report, real estate and vehicle capital source ledgers, third-party nominee, holding investigation records, comparative filings of falsified business accounts against actual revenue, and complete tracing documentation for anonymous transfers and intermediate fund streams. The exhaustive evidence clearly, intuitively, and irrefutably demonstrated that Eli had engaged in long-term premeditated concealment and deception, constructing elaborate layers of commercial packaging to mask personal greed. He maliciously transferred millions of dollars in marital community assets, diverting 8 years of joint entrepreneurial profits to fund full purchases of real estate, luxury vehicles, and massive quantities of high-end luxury goods for the third party, all to satisfy his extramarital desire and avarice. The scheme was meticulously planned, long-running, and rooted in unambiguous subjective malice, constituting pure premeditated infringement, willful dissipation of marital community property, and egregious violation of a spouse's legitimate legal rights. The 3 tiers of evidence unfolded sequentially, interlocking, mutually corroborating, and locking down every detail. Each document pinpointed the opposing sides' loopholes and stripped away their camouflage, every evidentiary submission eroding their negotiation leverage and bargaining foundation, rendering all their arrogant rhetoric, self-serving arguments, and unreasonable demands self-defeating. The atmosphere in the mediation room underwent an earth-shaking reversal in an instant. The previously one-sided dynamic of suppression completely flipped. Todd's long-held arrogant bearing collapsed entirely, his countenance sinking and crumbling step by step. From his initial assured dominance, poised confidence, and effortless control, he devolved rapidly into stunned panic, flustered confusion, and incoherent rambling. His subsequent rebuttal arguments were riddled with contradictions, logically broken and self-contradictory. His usual polished pressure tactics, evasive excuses, and rhetorical framing became utterly ineffective and powerless against this unbreakable, fully closed-loop hard evidence chain. Trapped in a constant defensive position, he could no longer mount any valid counterargument or compelling rebuttal. Eli, who had maintained a facade of calm composure and unshakable victory, finally lost control of his demeanor. Abandoning his aloof silence, he spoke hastily and desperately, attempting to downplay his subjective malice, dismissing his months-long layered, meticulously orchestrated scheme of asset embezzlement, workplace entrapment, and marital fraud as nothing more than a fleeting impulse, trivial emotional mistake, or incidental marital conflict. Every weak, self-deluding whitewash and evasive deflection he offered was systematically refuted by the recordings, financial traces, high-definition footage, and chat logs played in open session, ridiculous, futile, and pathetic. At that moment, Eli grasped the full truth. The entire system of commercial camouflage, covert asset transfers, workplace takeover plots, and elaborate divorce calculations he had spent months scheming and exhausting every resource to build had already been fully disassembled, captured, precisely identified, and thoroughly understood by Leah. The intricate, supposedly flawless plan he had prided himself on was utterly fragile, doomed to total defeat, and irreparably broken when confronted with irrefutable hard evidence, rigorous judicial logic, and a professional legal framework. Chapter 5: Negotiation Takedown. Dignified destruction of all greedy calculations. Following the complete collapse of settlement talks, Eli and his retained counsel clung to misplaced hope and dug in their heels, refusing all compromise concessions, rejecting liability for their faults, and declining to return improperly obtained gains. They clung stubbornly to their original unreasonable, harsh, self-serving asset division demands, banking on judicial leniency and discretionary mercy rather than acknowledging the full scope of their malicious wrongdoing. All room for settlement was exhausted, and the case officially entered public trial proceedings. The full trial strictly followed California Family Court's formal judicial process, fully transparent and adjudicated per legal statute, with all proceedings documented and traceable. Judging centered exclusively on evidence and statutory law, free of emotional bias, subjective favoritism, backroom accommodations, or compromise based on personal connections. All case facts underwent cross-examination in open court, all disputed points debated on the record, all wrongful acts formally adjudicated, and all asset conflicts audited on the spot. Every stage impartial, rigorous, substantiated, and procedurally standardized. During the trial, Kate delivered a clear, precise, logically airtight opening statement reciting the full factual record of the case, presenting evidence item by item and matching each exhibit to corresponding California Family Code provisions. She comprehensively, granularly laid out every malicious wrongful act and infringement committed by Eli. Over a year of continuous extramarital infidelity and stable cohabitation, premeditated collusion with outsiders to entrap his spouse at work, malicious concealment and transfer of millions in joint marital assets, diversion of shared entrepreneurial profits to sustain a third party, fabrication of slanderous falsehoods to malign his spouse, and deliberate deprivation of the spouse's legitimate founding equity and property rights. All evidence was authentic, valid, fully traceable in a closed corroborative chain with cross-referencing layers, all wrongful acts clear, undeniable, and impossible to whitewash, all subjective malice thoroughly substantiated with exhaustive detail, incapable of mitigation or concealment. The case's logic was tight, evidence rock solid, facts unambiguous, leaving no room for dispute or ambiguity. Opposing counsel was left completely without grounds for rebuttal, devoid of viable arguments or litigation tactics. Drained of all options, he could only repeat hollow, weak defenses framing Eli's conduct as mere emotional fault lacking intentional infringement and ordinary marital discord, attempting to minimize the scale of his layered, premeditated wrongdoing, dilute the severity of his subjective malice, and downplay the nature of his malicious property infringement. He begged the court for lighter penalties, discretionary asset division, and reduced liability. The judge remained rigorous, impartial, and unbiased throughout the proceedings, conducting granular cross-examination and verification of every piece of evidence, sorting the complete case logic, timeline, fault sequence, and infringement facts line by line. After hearing full arguments from both sides and referencing relevant California Family Code statutes and precedent governing marital asset dissipation, the judge issued a final, conclusive judgment, delivering the ultimate reversal and full reckoning of the marital dispute, corporate battle, and asset litigation, achieving precise, complete legal justice and vindication. 1. Statutory confirmation of marital fault. The court formally ruled that Eli's long-term extramarital infidelity and sustained extramarital cohabitation constituted severe marital fault, in flagrant violation of the spousal duty of fidelity and marital contractual obligations, and designated him the sole party responsible for the total breakdown and dissolution of the marriage. The judgment fully overturned his prior distorted, blame-shifting, spouse-defaming false narratives, establishing the fault determination as final and permanent. 2. 3. Statutory classification of malicious asset dissipation. The court held that Eli had engaged in long-term intentional concealment, transfer, and unilateral disposal of marital community property, utilizing a series of covert tactics including falsified business expenses, split transaction streams, third-party nominee holdings, and fund laundering to unlawfully deplete community assets and gift enormous sums to a third party without consent. His subjective malice was unambiguous, the scheme lengthy, the scale of infringement massive, and concealment extreme. This qualified as willful dissipation of marital assets explicitly regulated under California family law, triggering punitive property division rules with no allowance for discretionary leniency. 4. 5. Final marital property judgment based on the husband's severe marital fault, prolonged subjective malice, and massive wrongful asset transfer. The court issued a punitive, skewed property split ruling. Eli was awarded only 30% of all marital community assets, while Leah received the remaining 70%. The judgment imposed legal penalties for malicious infringement, held the at-fault party fully accountable, maximized protection for the aggrieved spouse's legitimate rights, and upheld judicial equity. 6. 7. Full forfeiture and restitution of third parties' improper gains. The court issued an enforceable judgment ordering Mila to unconditionally and fully return all improperly acquired assets with no exemptions, offsets, or reserve holdings. This included the high-end luxury furnished apartment, fully loaded premium sedan, all luxury goods, large private transfer gifts, and expenses for premium cosmetic medical treatment and travel. All ill-gotten wealth was fully recovered and returned to the marital community asset pool for compliant statutory redivision. Every illegally seized marital right was fully restored, leaving the opportunistic third party with nothing for her parasitic exploitation. 8. 9. Full restoration of career rights. The court formally recognized Leah's identity as the studio's core founding partner and her full 100% equity ownership in open court. It legally revoked Eli's previously unlawfully granted exclusive operational authority, fully stripping him of all rights to lead studio operations, project decision-making, and personnel management. Leah's full equal authority for business administration, overall coordination, final project approval, and team governance was fully reinstated. She was granted sole authority to oversee all future studio operations, team development, project advancement, and strategic planning, reclaiming the career foundation built over 8 years of her labor to restore rightful ownership and leadership. 10. With the judgment issued, the dust settled. Justice sorted the innocent from the guilty, and right and wrong stood unmistakably clear. Eli's months of elaborate plotting, greedy scheming, cold-hearted betrayal, and dark, self-serving human malice ultimately boomeranged to destroy him entirely. His ruthless ambition to discard his 8-year wife, drain all marital savings, monopolize 8 years of shared entrepreneurial labor, and build a new stable life with his mistress left him with drastically depleted assets, complete loss of operational control over the business, permanently ruined industry reputation, shattered personal credibility, and total defeat in both marriage and career. He had single-handedly destroyed everything he had built over years of work. Mila, who had schemed relentlessly to insert herself into a committed marriage, climbing the ladder through unscrupulous parasitic opportunism in pursuit of social advancement, career ascent, and financial freedom via a shortcut, ended up with absolutely nothing. All ill-gotten wealth was fully returned, every opportunistic gain erased, all avenues for advancement rendered void. Her professional reputation was irreparably tarnished, her industry standing collapsed, and her moral character exposed to all, eliminating all prospects for future growth within the field. The shortcut she had fought so hard to climb became a dead end, blocking all her paths forward. As the trial concluded, the sky was clear and crisp. Leah stepped calmly and unaccompanied out of the solemn courthouse. The sharp chill of early autumn faded away entirely. Gentle, translucent afternoon sunlight fell softly across her relaxed shoulders, clean, unburdened, warm, and healing. She felt no ecstatic outburst of victory, no shallow gratification from revenge, no condescending pride. Inside her lay only profound peace after weathering life's storms and witnessing humanity's worst, alongside the light relief of casting off every weight and chain that had bound her. Over 8 years of marriage, she had loved sincerely, borne every burden, remained gentle and steadfast, given selflessly, with a clear conscience and no regrets for the years spent together. After enduring catastrophic betrayal and elaborate entrapment, she refused to sink into weakness, hysterics, endless internal conflict, self-destruction, or self-pity. She maintained dignity, rationality, and moral boundaries, leveraging legal frameworks, irrefutable hard evidence, and professional legal counsel to advance step by step, strike back with precision, negotiate with poise, and fully reclaim the career, assets, dignity, and life that rightfully belonged to her. She accepted the loss with clarity. What she had lost was never a precious life, but a fragile, fraudulent marriage, a cold, self-serving partner, and a draining, confining bond that consumed her identity. What she had reclaimed was a complete, independent self, a brilliant business forged by her own hands, solid life security, and a dignified new existence, free to live without compromise or sacrifice for anyone else. In the years ahead, Leah reclaimed full authority over the studio's core operations and overall strategy. She purged all parasitic dependencies, opportunistic cultures, self-serving factions, and toxic personal connections from the team, fully cleansing the workplace's corrupt atmosphere to rebuild a fair, professional, pure, positive team culture and working environment. Drawing on decades of industry expertise, sterling reputation, core client relationships, and mature operational capabilities, she steadily advanced business upgrades, measured expansion, and high-quality sustainable growth, returning the studio she had founded from nothing to its original pure, professional mission of dedicated craft and focused creation. She continued to tend to her own home with care, remaining gentle, disciplined, organized, and passionate about life. Yet she would no longer compromise endlessly for anyone, sacrifice herself to bear all burdens for another, or pin all her hopes and future on a separate individual. She learned self-love, self-reliance, self-sufficiency, and inner wholeness, devoting all her tenderness and energy solely to herself and the life she owned outright. After enduring betrayal, legal battles, emotional strain, and final reckoning, Leah had grasped the profound truth of life. The most fulfilling, intimate partnerships are built on walking side by side, mutual support, and reciprocal devotion. The finest life is one of independence, inner abundance, and self-sufficiency. True dignity and security never stem from the fragile stability or partial affection won through submission, compromise, and humble appeasement. They are respect, freedom, and unburdened honesty earned firsthand through one's own rationality, capability, resilience, and clarity of mind. All past entanglements, betrayals, schemes, grievances, regrets, and sorrows were fully closed, erased entirely, and carried away by the wind. The dust settled, wrongdoers reaped their bitter harvest, conspiracies were laid bare, and every debt was repaid in full. She walked away clean, reborn toward the light, true to herself and true to the years behind her. From this point forward, her life held no more draining obligations, emotional exhaustion, or regret over misjudged character. The road ahead stretched wide, bright, and full of infinite possibility. Standing firmly upon the world she had built with her own hands, holding a thriving business and unshakable inner resolve, she stepped forward calmly and resolutely to write a brand new, brilliant, luminous chapter uniquely her own.